Welcome to episode 2 of Controversial Studies in Psychology. Today we're looking at Elizabeth Loftus' study of Lost in the Mall, 1995. It makes sense to assume that our earliest and potentially childhood memories are most accurately recalled. However, this documentary will explore how much of our long-term memory is in fact accurate. According to a survey of 1,500 Americans by PLOS ONE, 2/3 of people thought that our memories act as video cameras of events that happen in our lives, which can be later retrieved. Controversial opposing research by Loftus is proving this a common misconception in the general public. She explores the idea that memories can be implanted into our brains, and she managed to convince participants that they'd had a traumatic childhood experience of being lost in the mall, which had never actually occurred. Natalie Main took part in this study and has agreed to account her experiences when taking part.
It was disorientating to find out at the end of the study that I'd been, well, from what I can see, brainwashed into remembering parts of my life which didn't happen. I was told afterwards that there were 24 of us who were recruited by students at the University of Washington. I was the youngest, being 18, and I think the oldest was 53. Essentially, we were sent a booklet in the mail which had a short paragraph on each page about 4 childhood experiences I'd had between the ages of 4 and 6, which my mum had previously informed the researchers about. Mine were getting my first ballet award, being bitten by a camel in the zoo, being lost in the mall when I was 5, and the time we went camping during a thunderstorm. I then had to write anything I could remember about these experiences in the booklet and mail them to the researchers. The briefing form said it was a study on why some people remember some parts of childhood memories but not others. Around 2 weeks later, I had a recorded telephone interview with a friendly woman in which I had to tell her about the 4 events again after she'd briefly outlined them to me. I then had to give the memory a clarity rating on a scale of 1 to 10 and a confidence rating that in time I would remember more of the event on a scale of 1 to 5. I was told that the accounts of the memories were being compared with my mum's accounts of them. I then had another phone interview 2 weeks after that, which was essentially the same as the first. However, at the end I was debriefed and told that one of the experiences was false, and to guess which one it was. It turns out that the mall experience was false, which came as a surprise to me. It was written in the booklet so convincingly that I'd lost my mum and older brother in our local supermarket because I ran off to my favourite ice cream stall. It turns out that all participants were given the same experience, but tailored similarly to their own childhood. But the experience for all of us involved being lost in the mall for an extended amount of time when we were 5, a lot of crying, being found and helped by an old woman, and then being reunited with our family. It was a very strange experiment.
One of the students at the University of Washington has agreed to outline the results of the experiment.
On receiving the booklets back, we found that 7 out of 24 participants either partially or fully remembered the false memory, and after the interviews this dropped to 6 out of 25, meaning 25% of participants were recalling a completely false memory. The other 75% resisted accepting that it had happened. Of those who remembered the false event, the clarity ratings for this were 2.8 in the first interview and 3.6 in the second, potentially displaying that the memory is being slowly more ingrained into their memory after repeatedly recalling it. However, the clarity ratings for the false events were still lower than the true ones, which maintained a rating of 6.3. The confidence ratings were overall higher for the true events at 2.7 for the first interview and 2.2 for the second, whereas for the false event the ratings were 1.8 and 1.4. At the end of the experiment, of all the participants, 5 of those who claimed to recall the shopping mall memory chose one of their true memories to be the false one. Furthermore, although subjects sometimes correctly chose the false memory, it was done by a process of elimination, rather than definitely knowing they didn't get lost in the mall. One of our participants claims to remember key parts of the shopping mall story, but chose it to be false because she claimed her other memories were true without doubt. Overall, although the majority of participants were able to recognise the false memory, only 68% of the true memories were actually recalled, and 25% of participants were certain the shopping mall experience to be true, leading to question as to what degree we can trust our own memories. This could have implications in the justice system regarding eyewitness testimonies, as how could someone ever be brought to justice when we're aware of our memory inaccuracies?
With such a controversial study and its ethics possibly in question, We must consider to what extent we can use this as clear evidence for the capability of our brains when recalling our own memories. Natalie has allowed us to know how she felt after the experiment took place.
I honestly think there are some serious ethical considerations which are overlooked in this study. I felt completely deceived and wasn't informed that I was going to be deceived to such an extent, and now I'm left with this half-false, half-true memory. I have so much uncertainty of my own childhood now, and my mum is telling me she's worried it's caused me quite damaging psychological harm, especially considering the false memory was distressing. It puts into perspective just how malleable my memories are, and according to neuroscientist Costandi, ethicists are in agreement that toying with something as complex as memory may have unforeseen consequences. As well as it being harmful for my own well-being, the results of this study could be abused when used in a different context. After this experiment, I decided to read up about false memories and found in scholarly journals and courtroom testimony that therapists have been known to implant false memories of sexual abuse in their clients, displaying that research as this can be completely abused. According to research by Crook and Dean, researchers are ethically required to attempt to correct inaccuracies so that their research cannot be wrongly applied to other settings. This is something I feel is overlooked during this study.
Here at the British Psychological Society, we recognise that, although Loftus did make a great contribution to memory research, her research did not adhere to our code of ethics. This is one of the reasons that this study is viewed as so controversial. Loftus deceived participants as to the true nature of the study and did not gain their fully informed consent. It is also possible that some of the more vulnerable participants may have come to psychological harm, which, although Loftus provided advice for, should be avoided if possible. Loftus could have gained prior general consent from a public sample to strengthen the ethical stance of her study. That said, the study did provide useful information into the malleability of our memories, so perhaps in this case, the psychological knowledge gained from the study did outweigh the ethical concerns.
She also tells me that I got lost in our local drugstore when I was 7, but obviously the details of this were slightly different in the experiment. It's a common experience and may have happened to some of the other participants too, and it's possible that I merged my memories of this occasion with the false memories of being lost in the mall when I was 5. Although I realise that this was acknowledged in the final article, the experiment would have been improved by using a less common experience than being lost, which almost every child is at some point. This means that some participants may have been experienced altered memories as opposed to completely implanted memories. As Wade et al. In 2007 point out, much of the representation of memory research twists it so that the term false memory is used to cover altered memories as well. This creates a distorted view of the research for the public.
After speaking to Natalie, our team decided to look into this criticism further, and we found something surprising that could be viewed as strengthening to the study. In another study conducted by Loftus, as reported by the BPS in 2005, memories of having met Bugs Bunny in Disneyland were implanted, despite the families of the participants reporting that such event definitely didn't occur. This shows how, despite the flaws and controversy surrounding Loftus's original experiment, it opens doors for future research that supports this original study.
I'd say another weakness is that I was told not to discuss the experiment with anyone else in the family, and although I kept to this, I wouldn't be surprised if another participant conferred with a family member, which resulted in them potentially finding out which was the false memory before the experiment was over, leading to me doubting the accuracy of the results. Also, just because I accounted the memory to be true doesn't mean a sweeping statement can be made, claiming it's easy to simply implant a false memory, as I was in the minority of participants who accounted it. 19 out of 24 of us did not accept the false memory as being true, a factor which is also supported by Crook and Dean. The media's portrayal of this research insinuates that belief in false memory is straightforward. However, results of this experiment claim otherwise.
Another participant, John Smith, is also here to discuss the experiment with us, and he didn't take into account the false memory and didn't feel it was implanted as a prior experience. He's now here to speak with us.
Unlike Natalie, I didn't take the false memory to be true. I trusted in my own instinct and I remembered the other ones more distinctly. I'd like to think the human brain is complex and evolved enough to be able to remember our own experiences. I believe we should be given more credit than it to be assumed that we can be so easily swayed into believing something completely false. I'm a little confused as to how Natalie was so easily convinced of this untrue memory. All I can assume is that she had a similar memory which, to some extent, was similar to the false one. As well as this, there are only 3 guys who took part in the experiment, me being one of them. The results could potentially be gender biased and explain why me being a man may be slightly more inclined to not believe the false memory. However, the research Loftus has conducted does not take this into account, and so it may not be a factor at all. Further study needs to go into this area in order for it to be credibly stated that false memories can be easily implanted.
For the purpose of this documentary, another participant, Brooke Sharp, was not debriefed over the phone after the experiment had concluded, but instead was debriefed by Loftus to display how the participant was informed of the deception after the study.
Come in.
Hi.
Hi, Brooke. So you know you're here today for your debrief.
Yes, yeah.
How did you find the experiment?
Yeah, it was good, I thought. It was a little disorientating at times to bring up all these old memories that I thought I'd forgotten, but yeah, no, it went well overall, I think.
Okay. So you thought the aim of the experiment was to see what parts of childhood memories we remember.
Yeah.
But actually it was about how we can implant false memories.
Really?
So one of the memories that we received from your family was a false one.
Oh, okay.
Do you have any idea which of the memories it was? I've got the full memories here, so...
Oh my goodness, I have no idea. I completely believe them all to be true. I guess the haziest one for me, and the one I think I gave the lowest clarity rating, was when I fell over at the nativity when I was young. That's the only one I can think, because I remember the rest to be true.
Well, your mum told us that one is actually true.
Yeah.
You did fall off the stage in the nativity. And actually you never got lost in a mall.
That's so strange. Like, I can remember so accurately, and it was an elderly woman, and I was crying, and she picked me up. That's really, really odd.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry we've deceived you like this, but
yeah, I feel a little bit confused after all that. Despite these ethical and methodological critiques, Loftus does claim that its applicability to other environments can be done reliably, as opposed to Natalie's opinion of them being taken out of context. Elizabeth Loftus was able to outline some of these for us for the purpose of this documentary.
I do appreciate the points Natalie has brought up, and due to this I have since addressed attempting to aid those with mental health issues. I found that implanting false memories of those with addictions, disorders or post-traumatic stress disorder has potential, and it may be necessary to force people to engage in treatment. Soldiers returning from war with PTSD is expensive for them and for society, and this has the potential to be used as a therapy for them. It has not been greatly tested outside of lab conditions due to it being a controversial idea, which may include deceit. However, I do believe it may have positive implications for society.
Another question must also be brought to the table. Why are some people more susceptible to false memories than others? Why was it that a quarter of participants believed the false memory to be true, but 3/4 didn't? Loftus's research fails to go into the individual differences as to why exactly that is. This can also lead to the possible therapies that Loftus suggests for those with addictions of disorders being ineffective for the majority of people who actually need them, again making this study a controversial one.
I do admit that the concept of individual differences in false memories is not something that was controlled for in my experiment. However, there is further research in this field that suggests certain personality types are more susceptible to the implantation of false memories. Hyman and Billings Jr. in 2010 conducted a similar experiment to mine and found that students who scored highly on a creative imagination scale and dissociative experiences scale were more likely to create false childhood memories. I think that if my findings were to be used in a therapeutic context, it would most benefit people who scored highly on these scales.
Loftus neglects to mention that Hyman and Billings Jr. only found a 25% success rate in the implantation of false memories. So, can we be sure that they would be effective for all highly creative people? It may be necessary to look at them from this cost-benefit stance. Is creating false memories to replace traumatic ones worth the risk of failure and making the memories even worse?
I know that the implications of my study can be questioned. I would argue that it is sometimes necessary to push the boundaries in psychology. Sometimes it is necessary to deceive people in order to learn more about memory, as it contributes to psychologists' understanding of the topic that could be incredibly useful in the future. Back then, ethics was not such a large concern.
So there you have it. We've examined this controversial study into memory, and while it may be difficult for the general public to accept just how changeable our memories really are, there is no denying that this research provides startling evidence into false memories. We've discussed the possible flaws of this experiment, such as its ethics, its implications, and the content of the false memory, while also touching on its merits. It's up to you, our viewers, to make up your mind. Is the study too controversial for its results to be used in real life?